when it's minus 52 Celsius, I should run out in the sun with as much skin exposed as humanly possible.
I think sometimes people wait for gotchas. They want to find me saying something silly, and they go, gotcha, Dr. Rose. Okay, the latest research shows that vitamin D is a critical part of our body's physiology. Low vitamin D, more osteoporosis. Low vitamin D, more hip fractures. Low vitamin D, more heart attacks, stroke, cancer, and death. We're finding this out now because vitamin D used to be very expensive as a test. It might cost several $1,000s. Now vitamin D has been added to these multi-lab tests, and now it's pennies. And with that, we now know that thousands and thousands, maybe more than half of all Americans and more than that of Canadians are vitamin D deficient. We have a huge inadequacy in our levels of vitamin D, and we think that's related to an increased risk of death, cancer, heart attack, stroke, osteoporosis, and things like that. So the natural idea is, let's take more vitamin D, and probably we should. But remember that vitamin D's normal, natural mechanism for getting into us is for us to go out in the sun. Okay? That's the way God intended. God did not intend for us to take pills of vitamin D. Now, I'm not opposed to pills. I like pills. Much more convenient than having to schedule being outdoors every day for 20 to 30 minutes, as naked as is reasonable. But there are some very disconcerting research studies, and this has been addressed on my Twitter feed, my Facebook page, and our website. I want to give you an example of how supplementation with pills of vitamin D failed to help people. So in Australia, they found, I think, 5,000 or 6,000 women who had low vitamin D. Half of them, they gave one huge dose of 600,000 units of vitamin D to raise their levels every year for 3 years. And they chose one giant level because previous studies of giving people tablets of vitamin D has been equivocal as to whether it helps. So again, let me say this. Lots of studies show that if you have a low vitamin D, you have more cancer and stroke and death and osteoporosis and hip fractures. But there have been a bunch of studies where they gave people vitamin D and the results weren't as good as expected. So the Australian study said maybe these women who were giving vitamin D to in the other studies weren't taking their tablets. So we'll give them one giant dose every year, and they measured their blood, and their vitamin D levels went sky high after they got this giant dose. At the end of 3 years, they had the group that got no additional vitamin D tablets, the placebo group, and the group that got vitamin D. And they measured how many hip fractures and how many falls occurred in the two groups. The ones who got the vitamin D had more hip fractures and more falls. Maybe I misspoke. Let me say it again. The ones who got the vitamin D did worse. Okay? Now, I don't know that that's the end of the story. There may be more research to be done. Maybe, there's something wrong with that study. But there have been other studies similar that suggest that the mechanism of getting vitamin D may be best in the natural form, which means get out in the sun. Now, I find this annoying. It's not convenient for me to get out in the sun. There's very little sun in the operating room. There's no sun here today. Okay? So that makes it difficult for my job, but even though it's annoying and I don't want to tell you this, what I think is that every one of us are designed to function best when we get some sun every day. I'm not saying you should wait until Saturday, after being indoors all Saturday, and spend 8 hours in the sun baking to a potato chip in Tucson. Right? That's not the suggestion I have. Because remember, the big fear of being in the sun is that you're going to get a melanoma, terrible skin cancer, and die. Some researchers have looked at the danger of the sun, and the deaths per year in the United States from melanoma is about 1,000 or so, if I remember right. On the other hand, the deaths that might be prevented by extra vitamin D might be in the number of 1 million. So there's an argument to be made that we shouldn't fear the sun maybe as much as we should, and that in a careful, moderate way, we need to get out in the sun. And so back to your question, if you have low vitamin D, right now I think most doctors recommend taking the tablet to bring your vitamin D level up. But there's some really bothersome research that suggests that may not fix the problem. And my recommendation from the best research I have that I can understand right now is get out in the sun every day for 20 to 30 minutes, which is with as much of yourself exposed as decency and good judgment allows. Yeah?
Will it work? Let's say you're in Pinedale, Wyoming, and it's 7 below zero, and you have an atrium, and you're out in the atrium getting sun through the glass.
That's a good question. Yes. Sun through glass and sun through clothes and things like that still helps. It decreases the amount of the absorption of the UVB rays, which make the vitamin D, but still, as much as you can every day. And again, that everyday factor is really critical. And for example, you can get it through the glass of a car. So it does decrease it. And just like if you wear a shirt, a T-shirt has an SPF. And a wet T-shirt has an SPF that goes down. So those of you participating in wet T-shirt contests should beware. But there are levels that you can beware of, and sun is good. Too much sun is bad, but it seems like from the vitamin D research, the best that I can communicate to you today is all of us need sun every day. A simple way to do that is get an annoying little dog and walk the dog every day, because that'll drag you out, get you out, to take the little dog out. Okay, I got to take the dog out. You have to take the dog out, otherwise he poops on the carpet. Okay, that's the kind of dog you want.
I have 2 adopted daughters, and one is about as pale and white as they come, and the other is about as black as they come, because her birth parents are both from the Ivory Coast. Do they both need the same amounts of sun?
I don't know, but you can certainly measure vitamin D levels now. They're really cheap, and all kinds of people have low vitamin D. Now, the pigment that's in the skin of darker people is designed to reflect and decrease the absorption of vitamin D, because they're from an environment where there's sun all the time, and so they have to protect their pale skin. So if I were guessing, do you really want a doctor who makes stuff up? I'm going to guess that the actual amount needed is maybe more in a dark-skinned individual than a light-skinned individual, because of the protection that the pigment in the skin might provide. But either way, if you think about it, every one of us probably can, or at least should, be outdoors for 20 or 30 minutes. That's not a crazy request. Plus, if you think about it, get off the couch and go out for 20 or 30 minutes every day is probably good for other reasons as well. But I think the latest research is that lots of vitamin D as a tablet doesn't seem to get the benefits of raising your vitamin D through natural means. So there's a real advantage to getting out in the sun, because I think the vitamin D level itself may not be the whole story. And I like to say it may be the fin of a shark and not the shark. In other words, if I see a shark fin in the water, I'm frightened. I'm not frightened that the fin itself is going to bite me. I'm afraid of the teeth. So that when we find low vitamin D levels, we can fix it by giving tablets. But it may be that the vitamin D itself is not the whole story as to why people are having cancer and heart attack and stroke and death and osteoporosis. It may be that vitamin D indicates you've been out in the sun, you've been walking the puppy dog, And that, in combination, is what's saving patients from those illnesses, and that we can't fix it by just a tablet. So that's a really good question, and that video will be